Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to walk you through a very timely and complex development coming out of Russia that's making headlines, a move with both domestic and international ramifications. Let's dig in, unpack what's happening, and explore what it might mean going forward. In recent days, Russia has officially exited the European Convention for the Prevention of Torture. This is a major legal and diplomatic shift. For decades, that treaty has been among the cornerstones of international human rights law, setting standards for how states must treat detainees, prevent abuse, and allow independent oversight of prisons and detention facilities. By withdrawing, Russia is signaling that it no longer feels bound by external scrutiny on how it treats people under its custody. Reuters, this decision didn't emerge in a vacuum. Over recent years, Russia has steadily rolled back accountability mechanisms, curtailed civil liberties, suppressed dissent, and tightened state control over media, NGOs, and opposition voices. Combined with the ongoing war in Ukraine, these internal legal changes reflect a broader trajectory. Russia is increasingly asserting its sovereignty in defiance of international norms. But what exactly does leaving the Anti-Torture Convention mean in practice? First, it means that the country is no longer bound by the formal obligation to allow independent inspections of detention centers or jails by international monitors. In places that were already operating with heavy restrictions, this further reduces transparency. Second, legal recourse for victims of state abuse is weakened. Those who had hoped to appeal to international bodies now have one less pathway. Third, the move sends a strong political message to domestic audiences, to civil society, and to foreign governments that Russia is turning inward, recalibrating which international agreements it deems binding internationally. The reaction has been one of concern and condemnation. Many human rights organizations see this as part of a pattern: withdraw from treaties slowly, raise the cost of accountability, and consolidate internal control. Critics argue that when a state exits an instrument designed to prevent torture, it's essentially removing one of the last structural checks on state power at a time when power is already shifting heavily toward the executive. Russia's withdrawal is being seen not just as a legal act, but as a political gesture. We will decide how we treat our people, not external bodies. From Moscow's perspective, the decision might be framed as a sovereign right. Russia could argue that it is protecting itself from foreign interference, that the convention is being misused, or that Russia's internal legal system is sufficient. But it's difficult to reconcile that argument with on-the-ground realities of constrained media, limited judicial independence, and reports from refugees, dissidents, and journalists who have faced pressure or worse. Another thing worth noting: this move also weakens Russia's standing in institutions that rely on treaty stability and mutual accountability. Countries that adhere to human rights norms rely on each other's commitments. When a member state, particularly one as geopolitically significant as Russia, withdraws, it erodes trust in the treaty regime itself, making it harder to enforce and monitor even among states that remain signatories. At the same time, this comes at a moment when Russia is already under heavy strain internationally. The war in Ukraine continues to dominate headlines. Russia is under sanctions, military pressure, and global scrutiny. In response, Moscow is focusing more and more on resilience, self-justification, and framing narratives of external threats. Withdrawing from the Anti-Torture Convention aligns with that posture. To deny external oversight, to tell its audience we are protecting ourselves, and to double down on internal control. It's worth dwelling for a moment on the human impact. For people detained within Russia, whether political prisoners, protesters, journalists, or others, removing international oversight doesn't change their daily conditions overnight, but it does remove one more layer of potential recourse. The possibility that an independent international investigator might report, raise alarm, or pressure change is now diminished. That reduction in accountability matters significantly when abuses are hardest to document and when internal mechanisms are captured by the state. What does this mean for the broader human rights ecosystem? First, it invites skepticism about Russia's commitments to other international treaties, agreements, and norms. If the country is willing to leave this convention, what's next? Will it reconsider other human rights treaties? And second, it pressure tests other nations and treaty bodies. How will states, NGOs, and international institutions respond? Will Russia's exit remain largely symbolic, or will it trigger norms erosion across other regions? It also raises strategic questions. For example, if Russia asserts that no outside body may judge its internal practices, what happens when allegations of abuse are made concerning occupied territories, conflict zones, or state security operations beyond Russian borders? The withdrawal may blur lines further. Internally, the move consolidates the message that opposition or dissent, especially in sensitive areas like security or war zones, must be handled entirely within state control. Now, this should be viewed in conjunction with other recent decisions by Moscow. Around the same period, Russia has also enacted a larger military draft, conscripting 135,000 men, in what is being described as the largest fall draft in nearly a decade. New York Post. In a time of war, such a conscription surge puts enormous pressure on Russian society, the military, and morale. It also magnifies the significance of legal changes. As more citizens are drawn into state service, the balance of rights, obligations, protections, and coercion becomes even more salient. Moreover, Russia continues to insist it is willing to match or exceed the United States in nuclear capabilities, particularly if arms control treaties lapse. The Times of India. That posture complements the withdrawal from human rights oversight. It's part of an overall posture that emphasizes strength, resilience, sovereignty, and the idea that Russia should not be constrained by what outsiders deem acceptable. In many ways, what we're witnessing is the unfolding of a deliberate strategy. As Russia faces pressures externally, it is reinforcing its internal mechanisms, weakening external constraints, and recalibrating which parts of the global system it wants to remain connected to. International human rights oversight is something Moscow sees as expendable in pursuit of internal control. So, looking ahead, what should we watch for? First, whether any domestic backlash emerges, whether activists, lawyers, or regional authorities push back against the withdrawal. Second, how international institutions respond. Will there be new diplomatic or legal efforts to press Russia, or will Russia's exit set a precedent others may follow? Third, whether further treaty withdrawals follow. This could become a trend. And fourth, how the move interacts with internal coercion. As more people are conscripted or placed under state control, reduced oversight may tilt the balance toward authoritarian measures becoming harder to check. Ultimately, this isn't just a legal maneuver or an isolated move. It's part of a broader shift in how Russia sees itself in the world, how it responds to pressure, and how far it's willing to reduce obligations to external norms in pursuit of what it sees as national autonomy and internal stability. So that's the current picture. Russia formally exits the Anti-Torture Convention, diminishing one of the key external checks on its treatment of detainees and reinforcing a trend toward internal control. Coupled with conscription expansion and a more aggressive posture internationally, we see a state reorienting itself against external accountability. The consequences for human rights, for international law, and for Russian society are profound. If you found this breakdown helpful, let me know, and I can also prepare a version in Russian, or a shorter explainer you can use on social media.